Bonds have major risks. That's why I'm getting out. I just did a video earlier today about a guy who had written that he's going to zero bonds. And look, that's fine. I don't care what anybody does in terms of, I'm going to bonds, here's my justification. You got to do what you got to do to go to bed at night safely. But can we get over this idea that increasing interest rates are going to be to a bloodbath for bonds? We don't have any evidence of that at all. None. There's no evidence of it. I'm sorry. There's just none. We know the deflation that happened in the last 30 years of the 19th century was wonderful for bonds, because anytime there's deflation, it's wonderful for bonds. That's not debatable. We know that during the Great Depression, during deflation, that's why they call it a depression, it's wonderful for bonds. No debate about that, I hope. We know the Japanese, the craziness of the last basically 30 years, been pretty good for bonds as well. No one would argue that. I hope no one argues that. All right, so we have three instances of deflation that bonds did just fine. All right, so deflation is the counter to inflation. All right, so people say, well, yeah, but Josh, when interest rates go high, the bonds will get killed. All right, so then we say, okay, what's our history in the capital markets of bonds getting killed during inflation? What's the history of that? So we know that we've had a massive inflationary time in basically late 60s to early 80s. That's it, my friends. That's it. That's the only inflationary time we have. So thus, we'd want to look at what bonds did during that time to get a gauge of potential for what they could do now if we go to an inflationary time. And there ain't much we can do because there weren't that many bond funds that we can look at to see what their performance was. But there was a few, and we're going to look at one, the oldest one that I could find today, which is the Putnam Income Class Fund. All right, the Putnam Income Fund Class A, I should say. Putnam Income Fund Class A. What does this bond have? Holdings are, let's take a gander, shall we? Should gander. 10% cash, 85% bonds, and some convertible shares and preferred. That's it. All right, so basically 100% bonds and cash, if that makes sense. All right, so let's see what the profile of this fund is. Let's see the profile. This role, Pinko's fixed income is a portfolio manager, service portfolio manager. It doesn't really say the profile. All right. It sees high current income consistent with prudent risk. It invests mainly in bonds that are securitized debt securities, mortgage-backed instruments, for instance, and other obligations of companies and governments worldwide denominated in U.S. dollars, either investment grade or investment grade quality. So sometimes referred to junk bonds. All right, so this guy is all over the place. Nice thing about this, it goes back to 1955. It's the oldest bond fund that you can invest in that I'm aware of. If there's another one I'd like to see it, it's not going to change. I'm just telling you. So let's look at this guy, shall we? And I'm not saying you should invest in this. I don't own it. I thought the Dow was going up. It's getting knocked around. All right. Anyway, so what happened? Something literally just happened in the markets. Look at that. Huh. When I started this video, it wasn't like that. So what just happened? Did we get a freaking nuke go off? Hold on a second. I'm not sure what's going on. So anyway, that's a big drop right there. What happened? All right, anyway, so let's go into this. We got performance. Let's look at the history of this bond fund. And there it is true. We've had consecutive years of down years. So I stand corrected when I say show me evidence of consecutive years of down years. We have twice in this. If this is the worst you got, I'm okay with it. So let's go back. This fund was started in 1955, and you can see year over year. 1955, 1957 is down. The following year is way up. 1962 is down. The following year is way up. 1966 was down. The following year is way up. 1969 was down. The following year wasn't way up. The following year wasn't way up. The following year was not way up. Remember, this is the beginning of the major increase in interest rates, by the way. Huh. Oh, look at that. 1973 and 1974. -2, negative. So basically lost 10% of its value in those 2 years. The following year is way up again. Increasing interest rates. So let's see what the interest rates were doing during that time, shall we? Let's take a gander. 1966, a 10-year treasury is at 4.6. Is that the rate? Yeah, rates. 4.6, 5.5, 6, 7.8, 6, 6.2, 6, 6.5, 7.5, 7.7, 8, 9. So if we go over here, we can see by 1979, it was at 9%, where 1966 is at 4.2, all right? And then by 1982, the 10-year treasury was at 14.6, the 10-year treasury was. So we had an increase from 1966 to 1982 pretty significantly. Then it's gone down ever since. All right, so let's take a gander what this fund was doing again. So from 1966, this fund did negative 6.21, negative 18.86, sandwiched between 14.9 and 15.4. So basically, we could say it broke even those years. Had 3 straight up years, 2 straight down years. So I get you. It got it all back the next couple of years. Up, up, and a couple down. So we've had 2, 79 and 80, down less than 2, down 15 basis points. That's it. Let's look at 1990, when we had the Great War going into. It was up. 1994, when the Fed was raising, down. Followed by a huge run to do 1980. Look at that. So from 1979, 1980, huge up, huge up. 1994, oops, I should say, excuse me, 1994, down 3%, the following year's up. 1999, Fed was raising, down 2%, the following year's up. Then 2008, we just had everything falling apart. Obviously, this is going to be the case because the insanity of mark-to-market accounting with a liquidity trap. And then it was up 44%, which shows you is not a government bond fund. And I think we had one other down here. All right, so I think we can come to an agreement that we did have consecutive down years. I grant you, it was 1973 and 1974, down 2 and 7. 1979 and 1980, down 1.89 and 0.15. Just no big deal. So from 1966 until 1980, 1, 2, 3, we had 4, 5, 6 down years. 1966 to 1980, we had 6 down years, and that's 8 up years. We didn't get, there's no bloodbath, man. And even the down years, down 1 or 2. Down 2 was 7.5, basically broken even. In fact, we can even get our trusty calculator. Hold on just a second. Take our trusty calculator, and we're going to say we're going to put $10,000 into 1966. You don't have to watch me. I'll pause it real quick. During that time where interest rates were going up, that bond fund still returned $10,000, grew to $18,000, $333, an 80% return in a time of high interest rates. Thus, stop this idea, my friends. And look, I think people, they try so hard to find a way to, what's the word I don't even know how to say it. It's just like they try too hard. There's no other way around that. It is what it is. All right, we don't have, I think this guy was writing about 70 to 100-year bond interest rate cycles. I'm like, dude, that stuff just is silly. We don't have 70 to 100 years of capital markets history in bonds that you could go into in terms of mutual funds, open-ended funds. We just don't. So we only have what we do know. Deflation helps bonds. Inflation might hurt bonds, but the evidence suggests, going back to 1966 and 1982, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't, man. I wish there were. I wish you could say, yes, people want answers. They want to say, if this happens, that will happen. A lot of people don't want to hear that. We just don't know. But we don't. We don't know. The models that you follow, that you think Med Faber, or what's the other one that people use all the time? I said Dorsey Wright, the point and click, or the head and shoulders thing, this 200-day moving averages and all that stuff. Oh, it just bores me to death, because at the end of the day, what you got to recognize, if you're about to retire, you cannot afford a 2007 October to March of 2009. You can't. You cannot afford a 1973 and 1974. You can't. You cannot afford March 2000 to March of 2003. You can't. You've got to avoid that. And as such, that means bonds should play a role if you're about to retire. Or the barbell, one of those two things. But you got to get enough liquidity to be able to, hey, you see Liam? Hey, you're on the video. Look, Lee. Lee, look. Hello, Leo. Come on. Common sense got to dictate this stuff, man. And common sense says, look, bonds aren't going to make me kill. I'm not going to make a killing in bonds, but I'm not going to get killed. Love your thoughts. We'll see you.